You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/ACAST.
In a world where January is supposed to be boring, one staple of the holidays refuses to end. The great deals at Verizon. The joy just keeps on coming. Right now, you can save on 4 new phones and 4 lines. Critics agree it's the deal that keeps on giving. Come into Verizon and save on 4 new phones and 4 lines on unlimited welcome. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you're new here, my name is Will, and each week I narrate your real-life paranormal experiences as well as cover some famous paranormal cases along the way. If you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com and it just might get made into a future episode. Before we get into this week's episode, as always, we need to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers, who are Laura B, Kat, Alex Martin, Glenda Hogg, and Charlotte Mead. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon, and if this is something you're interested in, you can find a link in this episode's show notes, or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast, where depending on the tier you choose, you can gain access to exclusive scary episodes and ad-free main episodes. But now, let's get into our next paranormal case. On a bright spring morning, September 16th, 1994, the students of Ariel School in Rua, Zimbabwe spilled out of their classrooms for recess, their cheerful voices ringing across the playground. The day was already hot under the African sun, as about 62 pupils ranging from 6 to 12 years old scampered towards the field for their mid-morning break. Teachers remained inside for a staff meeting, leaving the kids to their own devices outdoors. Unbeknownst to these children, this ordinary Friday would mark the most extraordinary event of their lives, an encounter that still haunts and inspires awe decades later. Rua was a rural community about 20 kilometres outside Harare, a place with more farmland and bush than buildings. Most Ariel School students came from well-to-do families, but they were a diverse group, children of various racial and cultural backgrounds learning together. The school's playground bordered wild, untamed brush. Beyond the manicured schoolyard lay tangled tall grass and thorny scrub, with trees growing in haphazard clumps. The undergrowth was thick enough to hide a child. And it was towards this brush, on that fateful morning, that the children's attention was suddenly drawn. It was sound that caught their attention. The children described hearing a high-pitched noise, and said it sounded like someone was blowing a flute. Other children compared it to the buzzing of bees or an electrical hum. The strange sound seemed to be coming from the sky above the tree line. As the children scanned the horizon for the source, something glinted in the sunlight just beyond the perimeter. Children began pointing and shouting, calling their playmates over. And there, among the trees, at the far end of the school's property, a silvery object was visibly hovering and descending. We saw the silver thing, just shining, remembered a girl named Candace in an early news interview. At first, some of them thought it might be a mirror or a distant house window reflecting the sun, but then they realised that made no sense, because there was no houses up there on the rocks. They watched as a silver object moved and whizzed through the air, unlike anything that they had seen before. Witnesses would later report that one or more disc-shaped craft silently floated down and landed among the trees just beyond the school's playing field. Some children said there was only a single craft. Others insisted 3 or 4 objects had come in along the power lines and settled in the brush. All accounts agreed, however, that at least one round saucer-like UFO touched down on the rough ground at the edge of the schoolyard. The object was about 100 metres away from the main play area, close enough to see it clearly in broad daylight. It was disc-shaped, metallic silver, and about the size of a typical classroom, perhaps 10 to 15 metres across. As it came to rest among the trees and tall grass, the children's curiosity overcame their fear. About a dozen kids ran towards the object, eager to get a better look. For a few long minutes, later estimated to be about 10 to 15 in total, something surreal unfolded. Around 60 children, 62 by most accounts, stood at the edge of the brush chattering in confusion and amazement. Some were as young as first graders, others in their early teens. Despite their varying ages and cultural backgrounds, nearly all of them would later tell the same story of what they saw next. As the children watched in wide-eyed wonder, a figure emerged from the craft. Actually, 2 figures were reported by many kids. One remained standing atop or beside the silver disc, while another climbed down and stepped onto the grass. Gasps and screams broke out as the figure on the ground began to move. It was a small being, about 1 metre or 3 to 4 feet tall, and it was unlike any person the children had ever seen. The entity was dressed in a black, tight suit which covered most of its body. It had pale skin, or a pale face, described by one child as looking almost like plastic. Most striking were its eyes, described as large, elongated, oval eyes completely black and glistening. The being's head was oversized and shaped oddly. One boy would later say that it had an oval-shaped head, with a slight greenish hue. Its mouth was just a thin slit, and it had no obvious nose or ears. The school children stood frozen, transfixed by this sight. A few began to cry in terror, especially some of the younger ones who came from local Shona and Ndebele families. Those children thought the strange little man in black was a demon, perhaps a Tokoloshe, the evil goblin creatures of local folklore. And that's what some of them screamed out, convinced that an evil goblin had come to eat them. They burst into tears. All the children were certain that this was no ordinary human. The entity seemed to move in an odd way. Several children said the creature walked or ran in slow motion, as if time itself had stretched out. One girl later described it as bouncy, as if a human could run on the moon. Others agreed with this and said it was like as if they were running in slow motion across the grass, but in a confusing way. It would run a bit, then suddenly glitch and appear back where it started, repeating the motion. To the kids watching, it was as if the being could teleport or rewind its movements. An utterly disorientating sight that sent a jolt of fear through them. One former student, Claire, was quoted as saying, "That was frightening," referring to the movements, more frightening than seeing what these things actually were. And the bizarre, jerky movements made the encounter feel like a nightmare had come to life. Finally, the small figure approached the line of children. It came to a stop a few meters away from the front of the group. In that moment, a hush fell. Imagine dozens of children standing dead still in the blazing sun, hearts pounding, as this otherworldly being stands directly opposite them. Many of the children later said they felt paralysed, not physically restrained, but captivated by the creature's huge black eyes. The being simply stared at the children, and they found themselves unable to look away. "It looked evil because it was just staring at me," one little girl reported, "as if it wanted to come and take us." Some of the younger children screamed and bolted away, running back towards the school buildings in fear, but roughly 30 to 40 children remained. Despite the terror bubbling up in their throats, several of the older children felt oddly calm. Then, something happened. Later, the students would struggle to explain it. It was as if thoughts, images, or feelings suddenly jumped from the creature's eyes into their minds. One boy staring into the creature's eyes sensed an overwhelming worry about the planet's future. When Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack interviewed this child later, the boy struggled for the right words. He said, "It was something about what's going to happen." Pressed further, the boy simply answered, "Pollution." He felt that some catastrophic event related to pollution or environmental destruction was looming, a warning transmitted directly into his mind. A little girl would describe a similar mental message. She said, "I think they wanted people to know that we're actually making harm on this world, and that we mustn't get too technologic." She lightly meant too technologically advanced or too dependent on technology. To this young girl, the communication was a plea against rampant technology and environmental abuse, a plea delivered telepathically by the eerie being before her. Perhaps the most chilling message of all came to a little girl about 10 years old. In her mind's eye, she suddenly saw a vivid scene. In her words, she said, "It was like the world, all the trees would just go down and there would be no air. People would be dying." This child, shaken by the vision of an earth laid waste, and somehow understood a contrast between the being's world and ours, she said, "I think that in space there's no love, and down here there is." It was an innocent, yet profound reflection, as if the alien visitors envied something about human beings, even as they warned of our own self-destruction. To the children, these impressions were powerful and overwhelming. Not all of them received the exact same message, but variations of this urgent environmental warning came up again and again in their separate accounts. Some kids only sensed a feeling of dread or a broad idea of something bad is going to happen. Others, like the ones mentioned, could articulate specific themes: pollution, technology, deforestation, the air running out. It's important to note that these rural school kids in 1994 were not likely to be outspoken eco-activists. Topics like ozone depletion or climate change were not exactly playground chatter, especially in this corner of Zimbabwe. Yet here they were. Approximately 62 children deeply shaken, many of them crying, talking about ecological collapse and the dangers of technology the very day after encountering the UFO. And going back to this event itself, well, it was over in 15 minutes. The figure turned back towards the craft. In a blink, the silvery disc lifted off the ground, rising above the trees. A few children said they saw multiple craft reunite into one, or several small discs shoot off in different directions. The details varied in these split-second final moments, as one might expect when dozens of excited kids witness something, quite frankly unbelievable from different vantage points. But in an instant, the gleaming objects vanished into the sky. The spell broke, and the schoolyard erupted into panic. Some children joined the others, screaming and shouting for the teachers. Inside, the school's faculty meeting was interrupted by a horde of children knocking on the windows and doors. The teachers, startled and sceptical, tried to restore order. Initially, a few staff members assumed the kids must be playing an elaborate prank or had let their imaginations run wild. But the children would not stop talking about what they'd seen. Even as lessons resumed, many were too agitated to focus. They kept whispering about the little man and the round ship in the trees. Some of the younger ones were so scared they stuck with the older students for comfort. Eventually, a few teachers did pull aside some of the more upset children to hear them out. The stories these kids told were astonishingly consistent. By home time that afternoon, the students had not quietened down about the encounter. When parents arrived to pick them up, they found many of their kids in a distressed, excited state. And by that evening, the events of the day were the talk of many dinner tables. Not everyone believed their kids. In fact, many did not. The stories sounded outrageous. And at first some parents scolded the children for telling lies or frightening their younger siblings. However, enough students from different families were all saying the same astonishing things independently. And by the next morning, a number of concerned parents were ringing up the school. Facing these inquiries, the school faculty could no longer dismiss the situation. Clearly something had upset the kids. The headmaster, Colin Mackey, convened a meeting at the school with parents and teachers. By then, the day after the encounter, word of the bizarre incident had begun filtering out. One or two parents had contacted a local radio station, which mentioned that some children in Rua reported a UFO sighting. This caught the attention of Cynthia Hind, Africa's most prominent ufologist at the time, who quickly got in touch with the school. Hind was a respected local journalist and investigator of aerial phenomena. She'd even been MUFON's representative in Zimbabwe and published a newsletter on UFO sightings. Hind arrived at Ariel on September 20th, 1994, just 4 days after the encounter. Hind immediately set about interviewing the students one by one and asking them to draw pictures of what they had seen. The results left her both astonished and convinced. Nearly all of the children told her the same story, and their drawings were eerily similar. In their interviews with Cynthia Hind, the children also consistently stuck to what they personally experienced. The core elements were constant. Something unidentified landed. Some being came out with big black eyes and communicated telepathically. One student even initially thought the figure might be a gardener in overalls, until he saw the face and hair close up and realised it was not human at all. Hind was impressed by how sincere and shaken the young witnesses were. In her report published in her UFO Afri News newsletter, she did not mince her words about the sceptical reactions from adults. What a frightening indictment of our society, that when we are confronted by something we don't understand, we don't even attempt to open our minds to the event, Hind wrote. News of the Ariel school incident spread rapidly, first locally and then worldwide. The BBC's Zimbabwe correspondent Tim Leach visited the school on September 19th and filmed some of the first interviews with the children and teachers. Leach was an experienced war reporter hardened by covering conflicts in Africa, but what he found at Ariel unsettled him beyond anything he'd encountered. He later said, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this UFO thing. It just didn't make sense." Seeing the genuine fear and conviction in the kids' faces and being at a loss for conventional explanation, Leach felt this story required special expertise. And that's when he called in extra help, in the form of Dr. John E. Mack, a psychiatrist from Harvard University. Dr. Mack was internationally known, not only as a Harvard professor and author, but as a researcher into claims of UFO encounters and alien abductions. In the early 1990s, Mack had scandalised some of the scientific establishments by suggesting that people's reported UFO experiences could not all be dismissed as delusions or lies. He had even written a popular book titled Abduction: Human Encounters with Aliens, interviewing dozens of claimed experiencers. By 1994, Mack had faced intense scrutiny at Harvard for his controversial work. Nonetheless, he had held onto his tenure and remained undeterred. In fact, by mid-1994, Mac was expanding his research to include African UFO encounters. As fate would have it, he was planning a trip to southern Africa that very autumn, and thus, he was uniquely poised to investigate the Ariel case when Tim Leach and Cynthia Hind reached out to him. When Dr. John Mack arrived in Rua a few weeks after the incident, he found a school community still in the grip of bewilderment. A video camera crew accompanied Mack, documenting sessions, interviewing some of the children. Each child recounted in their own words what happened and what they saw. He was careful not to lead them. Instead, he invited them to draw pictures and share every detail, no matter how strange. Dozens of interviews later, Dr. Mack was thoroughly convinced that the Ariel school witnesses were telling the truth as they had experienced it. He later addressed a meeting of the students' parents to deliver his professional assessment. After listening to all the children, Mack announced that he believed them. The children we talked with clearly were talking about a phenomenon that occurred in physical reality. In Mack's expert opinion, these kids had indeed witnessed something inexplicable and real. Dr. Mack was particularly intrigued by the telepathic messages several children reported. During his time at Ariel School, Mack also spoke with the teachers and the headmaster about their impressions. Headmaster Colin Mackey told Mack that while he wasn't sure what the kids saw, he was convinced they had seen something very real and disturbing. Some faculty members confessed that they didn't believe the children at first. One teacher thought the kids might have exaggerated after hearing about a meteor sighting that week. Indeed, just 2 days before the Ariel encounter, on the night of September 14th, a spectacular fireball had streaked across southern African skies, prompting a flurry of UFO reports on the radio. Astronomers identified it as a meteorite, but it had certainly caused a buzz. In the end, Dr. John Mack's involvement lent an unprecedented level of credibility to the Ariel School encounter. While the media circus moved on within weeks, for some of the children life would not quite return to normal. The encounter left a deep mark on them, and as they grew up into adults, many remained convinced of what they saw, even if they rarely talked about it. Some found that sharing their experience invited ridicule, so they learned to stay silent. Others embraced it as a defining moment of their lives. Decades later, when filmmakers and journalists tracked down these former students around the world, the emotions were still raw. Consider Emily Trim, one of the Ariel witnesses, who was 11 years old at the time. Emily's parents were Canadian missionaries. After the incident, her father was so unnerved that he forbid the family from discussing it, and they returned soon to Canada. Emily grew up overseas, effectively told to forget what happened, but she couldn't. As an adult, Emily confessed that she still struggled with anxiety and lingering fear from that day. In a recent documentary, Fighting Back Tears, she described how challenging it was to carry this bizarre memory that few people around her could understand. Emily even turned to art as an outlet. In 2016, she exhibited paintings depicting the alien figures and swirling energy, calling them a manifestation of the message she received at Ariel. For Emily, the encounter was not just a childhood scare, it became a profound, if traumatic, part of her identity. Another former student, Lizzle, was interviewed as an adult for a TV special. Viewing old footage of her younger self gave her chills. In the grainy 1994 video, she was visibly trembling. "I worry that the man is still looking at me and he's going to kill me." Those were her words as a child in the immediate aftermath. She was terrified the strange being might return for her. Decades later, she admitted that she still was traumatized. "You try and live a normal life. You try and move on," she said. "But it's always this experience that just opens up wounds again. And I don't know if it was telepathic, but the message I remember was that we were harming the planet." A pair of brothers who were among the witnesses later said that people over the years often tried to convince them it wasn't real, suggesting the kids must have seen a helicopter, a prankster, or just a rock reflecting light. It was definitely not a rock. I know what a rock looks like. On the lower half of it there were lights, one brother said. He remains adamant that what they saw was a structured craft with lights, not some fantasy conjured from a shiny stone. The other brother saw the being more directly and recalls its appearance vividly. Short, long arms, with a crazy, greenish, oval-shaped head. Yet not all of the former students feel the same. In a startling twist, one of the Ariel witnesses has since claimed it was all a hoax, at least from his perspective. In 2023, a man identified only as Dallin, who was a student at Ariel in 1994, told a Netflix documentary crew that he concocted the UFO story as a prank to get out of class. According to Dallin's controversial account, he and a friend pointed at a distant, shiny object, a rock or a piece of trash, and started yelling, pretending it was a spaceship, an alien. He suggested that mass hysteria took over and the other children either lied or imagined the encounter. Dallin's confession, however, could not be independently verified, and it stands at odds with the testimony of dozens of his classmates. When news of his claim spread, many of the other Ariel experiencers were dismissive or even angry. They insist that Dallin was not among the core group who went out to the edge of the field. Some don't even recall his presence in the crowd. Furthermore, none of the other 60+ children ever backed up his hoax story, not at the time and not in the decades since. The Ariel school encounter remains firmly in the lore of UFO sightings, and it seems that in the sleepy agricultural outskirts of Rua, something took place that defies easy explanation and that has left an indelible imprint on dozens of lives. We have drawings, taped interviews, and the emotional scars as evidence of that Friday morning in 1994. We have the words of a little girl who said, "There was no air, and the people were dying." If the children indeed saw what they claim, who were the mysterious visitors, and why impart warnings to a group of rural school kids before vanishing? If it was a case of collective fantasy, how could so many unrelated children describe the same thing with such coherence and certainty? And what I can't get out of my head is that we are left with an image of innocent kids under the African sky playing and laughing one moment and then frozen in terror and wonder the next. The Ariel school still thrives and stands today. The bushes have since been cleared for a soccer field. Perhaps it will forever remain a mystery, a strange legend passed down, but for many of these children, it was real. Their drawings and words stand as testimony to an encounter that, in the words of one investigator, will brand you for life. Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes of Scary. The links for everything you need can be found in this episode's show notes. I hope you all have a wonderful week and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
Most drivers overpay for car insurance, not because they're careless, but because the system is needlessly complicated. Jerry fixes that. Traditional comparison sites give you quotes once, then disappear. But Jerry can handle all the insurance shopping legwork and never stops working. Compare 50+ insurers side by side and purchase directly in the app. No spam calls, no hidden fees. They'll even monitor price trends and can alert you to better rates. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
Dreaming of getting the all-new iPhone 17 Pro designed to be the most powerful iPhone ever?
Then stay in bed and let a Boost Mobile expert deliver and set it up for you.
Oh, actually, they will have to get up and open the door.
Oh, right.
Delivery available for select devices purchased at boostmobile.com. Terms apply.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the...
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your...
windshield wipers. eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying... just beautiful.
Millions of finds, each with a story. eBay. Things people love.
In a world where January is supposed to be boring, one staple of the holidays refuses to end. The great deals at Verizon. The joy just keeps on coming. Right now, you can save on 4 new phones and 4 lines. Critics agree it's the deal that keeps on giving. Come into Verizon and save on 4 new phones and 4 lines on unlimited welcome. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Guys, it's no use putting it off. The best time for an underwear refresh is now. Tommy John underwear is designed for a perfect fit that stays put all day. There's zero chafe thanks to 4 times more stretch than competing brands. And their innovative horizontal quick-draw fly is a game changer. With over 30 million pairs sold, there are thousands of men out there more comfortable than you. Don't settle for less. Go to TommyJohn.com today for 25% off your first order with code COMFORT. That's TommyJohn.com/comfort. Tommy John. Comfort perfected.